Hi, welcome back to the second installment of the June Virtual Wine Club here at UFS. My name is Sam Vandegrift. Thanks for joining me, and we're gonna get right to it. We're drinking wine in a can, and I mean that a little tongue-in-cheek. I think that we have the same reaction to wine that's in this format as we did to screw caps, maybe 5-10 years ago. This is really a lovely way to bring a half a bottle of wine to a picnic, have it in your fridge so that you can just drink it whenever you want. And it's about 2 servings of wine, which is really lovely. So this is the Cascadian Outfitters Rosé. This is the bonus wine for this section. Washington State's where we're going to be today. So again, we're at that same latitude kind of that France grows all of its grapes at. This is Syrah based, and they're a little nebulous as to what the blend is exactly, but I think about this as kind of a southern French style red, and it is American, so it's a little bit juicier. But give it a little swirl, take a look at the color. It has that lovely kind of salmon complexion to it. It smells like pepper and fruit, and give it a little taste. I would say this wine's dry, but like just dry. It has this kind of like watermelon rind quality to it. Lots of bright fruit, good acid, and this chilled in a cooler on a hot summer day, it's going to be a delight. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video now and go back and taste this wine kind of on your own at your own pace, please do. And that's going to give me a moment to go ahead and get set up with the 2 reds for the week. Now I've already poured the G3 Merlot, and I'm going to use the same glass that I used for the rosé for the cedar and salmon red blend. And Washington State is a really interesting growing region to me, and I picked these wines specifically because I think they're such a great alternative to wines from California, and quite honestly, I think for the money, these drink about twice as good as wines from California in the same price point. It's not to say that there aren't great values in California still, but the general price to quality ratio, I think on wines from Washington State is really exceptional right now. These are Bordeaux blends, so we have a wine that's dominated by Merlot and a wine that's dominated by Cabernet. They're going to taste very similar to the wines that you would expect from Sonoma or Napa, Paso Robles. But, and this is I think is an important distinction, because we're a little further north, we have the same kind of sun exposure, like the same angle of the sun that you would get in Bordeaux. And I noticed there's this kind of hybrid between the 2 regions. So I do get the big, jammy, chocolatey, plummy fruit that I'd expect out of California, but there's a little bit more of this kind of graphite, earthy quality to it, and maybe a little bit higher acid than I would expect out of wines from California. So in general, I think the wines are pretty close to what we're used to from an American wine palate, and they just offer something different. So if we give first the cedar and salmon red blend, this is about 70% Cabernet. The rest is Merlot and Petit Verdot, classic Bordeaux blend. So this would be what's called a left bank blend. So we're talking about the Medoc or Pauillac, Saint-Julien. Give this a little swirl, look at the color. This is classic Cabernet color, right? It's really dark, almost opaque. It has kind of garnet quality to it. Give it a swirl. And I noticed that like cassis. Cassis is not one of these things we eat very often, right? Black currants. The closest thing I can equate it to is a little bit like a tart cherry. So not like a ripe Morello cherry, like a really tart choke cherry mixed with a blackberry. That's the way I think cassis smells. And there's also kind of this piney character to that. I notice a little bit of oak on this wine, so vanilla, and then I get that chocolate, but I also get a little bit of gravel. It's kind of dusty. It's really it's pretty nice. So go ahead and pause the video now if you want to taste this wine for a minute. And if you want to keep going on, or you just came back, we're going to do the same thing with the G3 Merlot. So this is Goose Ridge Winery. They make a wine here that is predominantly Merlot. So it's Merlot with a little bit of Cabernet and a little bit of Cab Franc. And this is what I love about Washington Merlot. This wine is beautiful. It has this really luscious chocolate and black cherry quality to it. But there's also this meaty, kind of fresh off the grill savoriness. And that's precisely why I picked the skirt steak recipe for this installment. All 3 of these wines are going to be great with that right off the grill, but the Merlot in particular I think is going to sing. So I think you know where my allegiances lie. But let's go ahead and give this a little taste. All right, if you'd like, this is a good time to pause the video, talk about it with the friends that you're with. Maybe you're on over Skype or Zoom. Maybe you have people over finally. Be nice to have a little bit of that, wouldn't it? So I just want to point out some geography on this. Right, so we're in eastern Washington, and this whole area here is called the Columbia Valley. So the G3 Merlot comes from this broader region, whereas the cedar and salmon come specifically from Walla Walla, which is a little bit at the eastern edge of that whole Columbia Valley. And the question is, like, why does that matter, right? So when we're talking about regions that have subregions in them, this is a little technical, but I think the idea is the more specific you get to where you're grown, or the more specific you are to the idea of a sense of place, that is mirroring what we see in European wine traditions. And so we have a wine tradition in this country that's really not quite 100 years old yet. When we really started thinking about how we were going to label things and identify where quality regions were, we've only been at that for a little bit of time, where European countries have been labeling things by their place for a very, very long time. So they have a head start on what makes something singular or unique. So it was decided that Columbia Valley was unique enough to call that its own special place. So it's called an AVA, or an American Viticultural Area, and that's kind of analogous to a DOP or an AOP if you're in France or Italy. Likewise, Walla Walla Valley, which is inside of Columbia Valley, was decided that because the soil, the climate, and the quality of the wines was unique enough, they would give Walla Walla its own designation. And we're still kind of in the discovery process of identifying what makes something singular, what makes it unique in this country. And it's really an exciting time to be drinking wine, especially from regions that are a little bit out of the mainstream. So one of the things that I love about Merlot in particular, and I'm actually a big Merlot proponent, is that because it was dogged on so hard in the last 10, 15 years, these wines are really tremendous values. They're beautiful, they have the same structure, by and large, that Cabernet does, but I think they're a little more voluptuous, which is awfully fun. And I think when we're talking about having food with beef, Cabernet can be a little bit hard. It's a little bit tannic sometimes, whereas I think that the silkiness of Merlot really complements the kind of beautiful marbling that we get in these great steaks that we have in the Midwest. So I hope you had fun today. And go ahead and watch the video again at any point if you want to pause. You know, it's always a good time to go and sit down and chat with the people that you're with, or just with yourself. Like, what is it that I like about these wines? I picked wines that are going to be able to stay open for a few days. You know, I think the can you probably should knock out in one session. But these two reds, and actually the reds from last week too, and that Chardonnay, you should be able to drink those over a series of days, be it 1 or 2 days, or be it 3 or 4. I think is going to be totally fine. And it's really fun to kind of watch the wines evolve over time as you have them out. Keep them somewhere relatively cool, so I wouldn't put them next to your stove, but you don't need to put them in the fridge. I think they'll be okay if you leave them out on the counter somewhere out of the sun. So I look forward to seeing you in July. If you have any questions or you want to suggest something for next month, please let us know. We'd love to hear what you guys are interested in tasting, and we look forward to seeing you then. Take care.